I always feel like I'm like holding my breath, waiting. I'm like, are we on? Is this thing on? Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the live show today. It's an impromptu live show a little bit, but we're here to talk about this really cool book, how to use it. We're going to experience my camera doing all sorts of mercurial things.
It was awesome. I just have to say it was awesome.
Yeah, it's just, it's had this beautiful, I feel like post-Mercury retrograde flicker. And I suspect, I don't know, Mercury's high in the sky in my chart, you know, like a good Mercury retrograde, all like the whole cycle. I'm like, all right, friends, we're gonna be over here going with it. But also in it, you've both been to the channel and you're back. So that's really cool too, right?
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for thanks for not being scared off the first time and coming back. And
are you kidding? we love you. Are you kidding? We're excited to be here.
I was saying before, it was so funny because I did get to have each of you on individually. We had, you know, our talks about what we talked about, and now I'm like, I got the package deal. They're both here.
Yes, and far away physically. We are, Aswin and I, we don't see each other very often at all with our between India and the United States time difference. So it's a treasure.
Yeah, and I've been looking forward to this since quite a while. So thanks really for having us, because it also gives us a platform to kind of relive what we did over the course of 18 months or so. With so much of odds that always were stacked against us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, let's have a second and just introduce everybody. See, this is the thing about having a community. You just come in and just start talking and you're like, well, everybody knows everybody. It's fine. Just watch the video, which is not always true. All right. So welcome everybody. And today I've got with us Tara All and Aswin. I just want to say your last name. I do.
That's okay. It doesn't matter.
And I think it's beautiful. And your whole family would probably be really ashamed at how I said it. So, but welcome.
No, thanks. Thanks very much.
Ashwin, you tell us. You tell us the correct way to say it.
It's Subramanyan. I think you get it right. For newer people, it's a little bit difficult, but it really doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, next time it's going to be pristine when I say it here.
I remember last time when we were together, you asked me that whether you pronounced it correctly before starting the meeting for around 4 or 5 times. So it was a good exercise. I think this time you just forgot it.
I know. I'm like, nope, that's not it. That's not how you say it. Okay, we'll come back. All right, let's get in here and talk about this. Your book, your brilliant labor of love that you guys put in 18 months worth of work.
I was speaking at a conference in India and Ashwin ended up speaking there as well. And so then we met in person and he's like, I think this is the first chapter to a book. And we have the Mountain Astrologer to thank for not wanting to publish an article on the initial moon Mercury. Because
thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for that rejection.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It was really a blessing in disguise.
Worked out, right?
Yeah. And even then we didn't plan. I mean, so we didn't meet together very often, which is, I call Ashwin my soul brother now in part because we do have like an intuitive way of knowing and working with each other. What did you say, Ashwin? Like maybe 3 times during that year and a half, we actually had like a proper like sit down Zoom meeting. That was it. Yeah. The rest of it, we might fling a little messenger message or whatever, but the rest of it, we just kind of weaved it together. And I like how Ashwin says, I might butcher the words a little bit, but you say, it was a calling, right? That's how you say it was a calling. And so of course we say yes. That's not even really so much of a choice. It's that there's something about the moon that for both of us, wants to come through for everybody. And we just kind of opened the space. And boy, did we learn a lot. My biggest gratitude through the whole thing, I mean, the book's amazing, but Ashwin, our time together, and especially the way that you practice traditional Indian astrology, right? Different from my evolutionary astrology. Well, that's a core of what I do.
Right.
Being different culture, different primary language. Every time we would talk or even just chat about something, the way you would say it and the words you would use would cause me to step back and relook at the whole way that I looked at things. It's like I felt like I had a whole rewiring, not just of the moon, but of, in many ways, the whole way I look at different things in life. And so that whole East meets West is kind of no joke, when in our book promos we talk about it. But no, it was like, if you can imagine your East and West in your own body or your own being, it kind of was that type of a meeting in the center, which Ashwin says that the heart's the center of it all. So that was a real experience for us, and it was beautiful for me.
Yeah, I think it was as good as it was for my friend. And, like I think I always used to narrate this story, like where we began and where we ended up. So maybe if you have 2 or 3 minutes for that, I think it'll be a very interesting way to kind of look back. So I initially found Tara All through Smiljana's magazine, Infinity Astrological Magazine. It's a wonderful magazine that comes out of Serbia. And earlier she was publishing it through issue.com, and all the issues were free. And I was basically checking out all these articles, and it always used to kind of blow my mind when I was introduced to Western astrology. And my earlier introduction to any form of Western tradition was traditional Western astrology, like Hellenistic and medieval traditions, primarily because of the works of Ben Dykes and Chris Brennan. So who doesn't know them? So that is my primary work. But I always liked Stephen Forrest for his, his articulation is majestic, and his astrology is infectious, not just to me, but for everyone. So, and that's where I found the core of evolutionary astrology. And when I read, I used to follow 2 or 3 articles, I think, from Tara, and that was tarot. And that was my first introduction to tarot. And it was not even evolutionary astrology. But I used to read some of the works, and when she wrote portions of tarot, I kind of directly was able to relate to where she came from. And I took a lot of time to kind of get in touch with her. But then when I got in touch with her, I think things kind of naturally began. And as she mentioned, we were doing a podcast, and it was not even a podcast. It was after the podcast, the conversation that we had on Moon and Mercury being emotional mind and rational mind, that kind of was the initial spark, which ultimately turned out to be a book. But we wrote the article, and we had some kind of back and forth relationship with Frank Clifford, wonderful Frank Clifford. So we sent the article, whatever we wrote, to Frank Clifford, and Frank Clifford said that he liked it, but maybe he has to pitch in to the TMA editors and see if they're willing to publish it at this point of time. Probably they were not ready to publish anything regarding Moon or phases at that point. We were not sure why it was rejected, but I think we cannot be more thankful and grateful to the TMA for having rejected it. And ultimately, we remained silent for a few months, and we were focusing on, Tara was focusing on traveling to India. So traveling from US to India for a 15-20 day trip is not a smaller deal. So they were into planning, and things kind of fell apart. But somehow during all this, we met somewhere in March, early March, for the conference. And before I went to conference, I had something in my mind about the book. So, but we were about to kind of send the article to other premier magazines in the community. But we kind of chose to stay back. And I told Tara that I have some idea, but I don't want to share it now. Maybe you go back home and we can meet up and we can just get together. And that's where the idea, I mean, we spoke about the idea, and then I mean, there was no possibility of a no. Okay, it was out of the question. So you couldn't say no to that, and I couldn't say no to that. And from there, I think we had I mean, although both of us did not converse much before our first meeting for the book, I think both of us pretty much had the idea of how it was going to shape up because of the Moon Mercury article that we already composed. So the moment we wrote, I mean, we met for the first time to converse about the book and develop what we were about to do with this book. Every chapter in this book was primarily there. So that was it. And we decided which part I was going to take and which part Tara was going to take and which part we were actually going to share. And then we met for another time. I'm not sure about, no, we met to kind of discuss the progress. And then we had a big break where I had some issues going on with my health, and Tara was also sick for quite a while. And we had a break for about 3 months. And we met towards the end of the break where we actually decided to start the work. And that was when we actually powered through. And that was the last meeting where we spoke about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
That's perfect.
So we never had to kind of talk about anything else in between. And I think ultimately that kind of led us to closer to the book process. But I think it will be even more interesting to kind of go back and see how it evolved. I think I gave a gist of what happened, but I think you can just take on, and maybe if you have anything to say, maybe you can just go ahead.
I mean, I think we should tell people,
You're on the other side of it now, the initial meeting and how, thank God for technology, right? Like technology wins in this one because it absolutely brought soul people together. We're sky watchers and that's great, but this enabled this to happen. And now this thing is out here. So truly, as you look back and you look through the story or you look through all the things that were unfolding as you guys traveled together, what is that like for you guys? Because that's a story that is charted somewhere in the story, right?
Yeah. Do you want to go?
Well, if I as you were talking, Stormy, I think that the moon, and I want to talk a little bit about the book, while we're on here too, just kind of because the moon in part for me, I mean, certainly it traditionally represents home, but when you connect with the moon, it does bring you back home. It connects you to all the connections we consider to be home, not just in this lifetime. So that's part of what I feel that the book does for us, but that's actually what happened to us, right? In finding each other. And not just that, but then Aswin, your family, my partner, Darren, all kind of then becoming our own kind of group of friends or home is there too. So that's in part how it feels to me, a bit of a homecoming, which is a really moony thing to say, right? I hadn't thought about that so much previous to this, but it is. And the moon too, I feel we talk oftentimes about, the emotional part, and I always call the moon our okay meter, because to me, the moon is the most personal part inside, that every moment is telling me, am I okay now? How about now? About here? Is this okay? Am I okay when she's saying this? Am I okay when he does that? Right? Or but it's also so much linked with third eye and intuitive stuff, right? So this is where I would say as well, it was both, right? When you sort of trust that part of yourself that is not so rational, you can actually put together something that's pretty rational, like a book, right? And that's a pretty awesome combination of things.
Right. So I think it's basically an extension of what she said in terms of moon, because I think maybe moon is the beginning of everything. It kind of, it symbolically indicates growth, and it kind of started the process of our book, and it was because of moon, and it was because of the conversation that we had about the moon. And I think the initial conversation that that we had was this little bit of a difference in terms of what I called mind and what Tara called mind. So, and that is where everything kind of began. So that's the root of it. So, and in a way, moon is emotions. And we spoke about so many things in different flavors with so much of dimensions in the book about what moon might tell us, the story that moon has to tell in with respect to various relationships to various planets is basically countless. And moon, for me, I think the position of moon in my chart is kind of naturally is, related to the gratitude that I have for the work that Tara does and how I was able to relate to her work through mine. And we kind of, I think we never really had any kind of an argument, but we were always trying to bridge what I was doing and what she was doing. And that's where I think this book kind of becomes a platform where I stand at one end and you stand at the other, basically representing a conjunction or an opposition or any kind of a configuration, or even if you may call it phases. And I think both of us kind of evolved through phases as we started writing the book and when we completed. So it was one complete circle where Tara was always kind of there. For me, it was a little bit different. I had this wavering of mind, especially when it comes to publishing. That is another story. But she was there, but I had to kind of come around and see the entire spectrum. But she's more experienced and also more wise, so she always knows where to go and what to do.
I'm just older.
You kind of have the balance,
no,
right?
It's the backdoor way of saying that I'm younger. You should understand that.
You just gotta have you're gonna have the balance to have everybody together. So I wanna ask just right out of the gate. So the book to you guys is called Astrology by Moonlight, and it's beautiful and I love it. And I was commenting that the colors are purple and gold, which are stormy grace colors. So I feel really special to get to be a part of your experience over here. I feel like the grand trine has just happened because I'm like, I don't want to write a book, but listen, if you write a book, I'll talk about it and I'll read it, right? And I'll talk about it. And that's how I get to use my little special power. But I want to ask you guys, if somebody grabs the book, how do they use it? How do you use this?
I think, I'm teaching a lot of beginners right now. And so this book has great beginner material. And what I mean by that is it will explain the moon, and we'll go through all the basic planets that we work with out to Pluto, right? So there is that basic element to it, which makes it a great beginner's book. But then if you want to understand more about how the moon part inside of you is having a relationship with the other parts of you represented by the other planets, then this book goes through chapter by chapter, right? Moon with Mercury, moon with Venus, moon with Mars, moon with, Jupiter, on through all of them. And you can go through and explore that piece. The other thing that I think is really cool about it, and phases are just a huge part of what I work with, not between all planets, right? So that's just is part of my practice. This is based, and we should just say this is based in Dane Rudhyar's, the lunation cycle, right? So when we look at that is there, and then we jump off from there. But if you're trying to learn phases, the 8 solely lunar phases, this is perfect because it goes through the basics between the sun and the moon, and then it's applying it to all these different relationships. So what you get is like a repeat, in my mind, of the basic phases, which that doesn't change, but then applying it to different parts of yourself. So it's kind of like, how deep do you want to go with it? Right? Do you want to just learn about some of the basic things, which is totally awesome. I go back and redo the basics all the time. Or do you want to really geek out and look at all these interrelationships? I am so into even when I dip, and I'm not a therapist, right? But my friends that are work a lot in parts, right? So, and I do this technique called living planets first, which is where you look at the different parts of yourself as planets. This will help you do that in part. taking the moon as sort of the center stage, right? Which again, we said this, I think, in the book number of times in different ways. Ashwin, you do it really well, that happy moon is a happy life, right? That is the most personal part of I don't even want to say who, but what we are. So the more you can understand where that's coming from and how it's relating to different parts of you, you have this new ability to make choices, new ability to understand yourself, new ability to hold space for those different feelings and things that come up. So I hope that helps a little bit, but that's how there's sort of like, you can have it this much, or you can go this much. Yeah.
So it's built in a way that you can get this beginner information. So it is an absolutely beginner friendly book. And then you can continue to grow and expand that if you're ready to move a little bit on there. So it really is a book for the community, no matter where you're at, which I think is absolutely brilliant. To build something that is timeless, I think is really great. And I just have to agree before we get to Ashwin, but yeah, I work with the lunar phases. It is like the base of my practice, because I do feel like you guys, that this is the piece that I'm like, you're not going to get away from it. It is telling you the story. And my big thing is, please work smarter, not harder. Like if you are working against your life, your nature, especially from that inside out, it's really, really hard. And I think that we give ourselves and others a chance to have a lot of grace when we start to understand the way that our form is made this time, or existing this time. And that, like, I just watch people drop their shoulders down and go, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to have these experiences, and this is my lesson base. I've been over here looking at this and I've been doing wrong, but this was actually my lesson base. And for me, that's the point of it, is a lot of grace to breathe, move in the direction that you're kind of built for this time. But also the other side of it is to be accountable for yourself and for your choices. Because I do think working with the moon requires a fair amount of accountability.
It does.
Right? It's like, now I know. Okay, so what are you gonna do with that? So sorry, Aswin, I didn't want to cut you off, but I get excited.
No, I think that's totally fine. In fact, I did not have much to say. I think she put it in a very apt way. Like, I couldn't say any further. But one thing that I want to say is, like, maybe someone who doesn't know astrology also can take up this book and actually read it, because there needs to be some kind of basic knowledge of astrology and planets. But I think there is a lot of stories that actually are interwoven inside the book, which kind of is spread across the chapters and across the phases of each chapter. And so there is a different story for Moon, Mars, and there is a different story for Sun and the Moon. There is a different story for the Jupiter and the Moon. And there is an entirely extremely different story for Moon and the Pluto. Likewise, it kind of varies. The degree of differences and the stories that kind of is inherently present within the phases, that is the underlying factor of the entire material, like, which is based on basically an expansion of Dane Rudyard's pivotal work of the early 20th century. So I think it's basically a story that we want to say through this book. I think we have never spoken from this perspective, but I think there is a lot of stories that's there in the book, astrological stories, which might actually interest many people, and even pull people into the community. We need fresh blood.
Well, and our publisher, remember our publisher Llewellyn, we were going to originally self-publish, which is another story, for another time. But when we ended up with Llewellyn, which, by the way, this is kind of a funny but horrifying thing. I only just realized recently that I forgot in the acknowledgements to thank our editor. So anyway, now I'm not publicly saying,
you better put it out here live now.
Thank you to our wonderful editor. I am the worst person for forgetting that. But one thing that they actually didn't change, and we had it pretty much ready to go. And I am a copy editor and part of what work I do on the side as well. But one of the things that they really wanted us to do was change the introduction, because they wanted it to be accessible to anybody in the community.
Yes.
So Ashwin, to your point, yes. And the other thing I wanted to say, I'm sure Stormy, you talk about this in your work as well, that not everybody has aspects, but everybody has phases between every two bodies. And so, and I love this just gives me a smile on the outside and inside to say this. Moon is about everyday people, right? Moon it's not for fancy people, or only certain people that can access certain things, right? Moon represents everyday people. And so when we're working with phases in the book, that's also another part of what we wanted to do through the stories, but also just through phases, because you don't have to skip through and say, oh, I don't have a square, right? That's for somebody else, and that part I think is one of the things about astrology I love so much is it unites us more than anything. What I mean by that is all of us, we have every sign, every planet, every house in us. There's no exclusion, right? Even as humans, some of us are born without a certain organ, but that doesn't happen with astrology. I feel like it is the most unifying thing. And the book, in many ways, we wanted to weave that through, to have that feeling come through.
Yeah, brilliant. Which is, I just laugh because in mundane astrology, the moon is just the people. So it really is very funny. I'm like, listen, if you came here by whatever means and you're being a human, this is your deal.
Yeah.
Pick up the book. This is your jam. You're going to have some lunar light about you. Right. So this is actually just bringing up like kind of a random thought. I don't know if you guys have thought about it, but could you use this book on pets?
Oh, anything.
You can use for a non-living thing.
Did you say you can use it for non-living things?
Yes. I meant to say that you can use it for elections or horary or mundane purposes. So I think it should make sense for everything. So I mean, primarily it's earlier we wanted it to be a book that talks about phases and fundamentally builds slowly and exponentially on Rudyard's ideas, but ultimately it turned out to be far bigger than we even expected when we actually started. So you can basically use it for anything.
Well, and knowing where something's at in a cycle, this is why for me, for example, like the progress moon phase, right? I don't even, with clients, I don't even look at someone's chart these days without doing that for the most part. I mean, rare exception, maybe, like, because where you're at in something is everything, and the relationship between things is everything. So
100%. I am just with you because, this has really been this huge 4 or 5 year change of my practice to be like, no, you know what, you can tell me about whatever transit is happening. And I love that solar arc for you, all of these things. But the phase that you're in gives me so much more information about what's going on at a core level for you and how to best use your energy to respond to said transit. Because somebody having a Pluto in the first quarter phase, they may just go tear all sorts of things down and be very empowered by somebody experiencing a heavy Pluto transit in a balsamic phase. We need to have a different conversation, right? So that you work harder, you don't work harder, you work smarter. Working against our lives, I feel like, is the most exhausting thing. It's so defeating.
100% agree. Wow.
Yeah. So we're going to skip that, friends. And you're going to pick up the book. That's just here. I feel like a QVC model a little bit.
It does look a little like, but you look good. So that's the important part.
Yeah. The book also ended up to be much bigger than we expected. So it's a big book. It's like more than 150. It's almost 180. 200
yeah, it's
pages.
funny. It probably seems small to most people, but initially we're like, is it going to even be 100 pages? You know what I mean? Like, as you're working on it, and then,
and it came out to be nicely sizable without being, I think, honestly, without being overwhelming. As I was reading and getting through this, it was really nice because it was a book I could pop into my bag. And when I was doing recovery at the gym, or I was on a plane again, or something like that, this was such a beautiful way to travel with it. And I still like books. I mean, I do have a Kindle, but I still like books. And I have to say, it was a wonderful read, not only because I know you guys, and so I could kind of hear your voice. Do you know what I mean? Like, you start reading in someone else's voice, you're like, that's very good. But also, man, I love the lineage. I'm grateful for those that came before. But for me, the lunation cycle was very much so like trying to get down like a very dry cracker. I was like, we're going to get there. He is saying some good stuff. And it was a very, very hard read for me.
Yeah.
The information was there. That book probably took me 2 years to get through. And it's just that style. So you guys also bring, first of all, a light just between the two of you that's very fun, where you're like, I'm not sure we haven't been best friends for 100 years. So that's exciting. But also it's easy to get through what you have written and how you've done it. So I just want to commend you for that.
Oh, thank you. And Stormy, we were telling you, I think before we got on here live, that there were times, because I'm not aware of something that's written about moon planet phases, right? So we didn't have something to go back on and say, oh, here's how other people have done it. That part, we were kind of like, let's look at some, clients and ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But when we split up the part of writing the book, because we split things up in different ways, when I would read, like when I was, double checking, oh, right, so I am gibbous, whatever, this particular phase between these planets, I would read what Aswin would write about me, and I would have to like message him. First of all, I wouldn't have said it that way, but I'm like, how did you know? Like, it was so, some of the parts were so on point. So, I mean, just like me, almost like me being a reader, going through the process, I was like, whoa. So I continue to go back sometimes because it's hard to remember where all your phases are. I'll go back and kind of look at my little list. Oh, right. Especially if I'm going through a time that's kind of tumultuous, I'll go back and look, right. What is my moon Mars phase again? Oh, it's this, right. And that gives me, it helps me, I think, Stormy, you were saying before, kind of settle in. Of course I feel this way. Not a surprise, right? This is where I'm at in the process. And so that's been invaluable. So Aswin, thank you for like revealing parts of me through this process. And the moon, maybe I said it before, but moon doesn't do anything by itself. We say moon phases, but it really is solely lunar phases. I mean, I'm still going to say moon phase because like it's just comfortable. So there's nothing happening with the moon that's not relationship with something else. So every bit of light that we see is something working together.
Yeah.
I think I also had a similar experience. Like, I really don't use the UNP in my work, and I did not earlier, but I think I did some kind of a talk with Tara on Pluto. And that's when I even kind of realized maybe we should incorporate. So, and I think I would kind of emphasize everyone, those who have read the book and not read the book as well, just to go and read the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And it might actually give an insight if you actually don't use them. So, nice. I mean, continuing to use them or not choosing not to use them is completely a personal choice. But still, I think there is something that people can take away. I certainly took away in conversations that I had with you. And also, when I go back and read, there is a lot of revelations that I have internally. And one more thing that I wanted to point out is like, you don't really need to look at only your birth chart. You can look at your transits. So, I mean, incidentally, and it's funny that today Mercury and the moon are actually in conjunction new phase. And you see that moon has just finished the culmination phase, and it's just moving on to kind of close the entire phase. So moon is just like about 150 degrees away from Mars. So it's getting ready to get close to Mars for another phase, moon Mars phase, to begin. And today we have the new phase of moon and Mercury. And we couldn't have chosen a better time to do this.
But we didn't plan this out. Stormy didn't go figure out the moon Mercury phases.
Yes, this was planned way back in time. This was planned way back in time. So, and I mean, that's why I'm kind of saying it. So it's really, it almost feels like the entire field of consciousness is coming together to kind of tell the story, especially on this day when the moon and Mercury are conjunct, which is which is basically the foundation of the book.
Yeah, the start of all of it. You're right.
Yeah, That's
Right?
that's where it began.
Yeah,
So
you guys are saying it.
you
The
can
birthday.
call yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe a phasal birthday, not a lunar birthday, but phasal birthday.
Yes.
So
Which
so
is funny because really, truly, like for being astrologers, we didn't do all that. We were like, okay, listen, we are trying to get this together. How about this date? Let's just do it. We're going to make it stick. It's going to be great. Right. So we kind of had to, which we were laughing about that too, because Ashwin's like, no. I'm looking at the astrology. Tara and I are like, throw it to the wind. We'll work it out.
No,
So just astrologers do.
No, Ashwin actually said it was a very good moon word. He said his heart skipped a beat when we were talking about not looking at the astrology for when to plan.
exactly. Yeah. It's how can you not? Please. So the point that I'm trying to make is like you cannot. It's very difficult to kind of differentiate who is Moon and who is Mercury between us. So I always think this way. But and if you see who is Mercury and who is Moon and who is Mars, it's again very difficult to differentiate, because I think we kind of took that roles at different periods, at different stages. We both kind of switched roles even without us knowing. We did not plan that. And I'm just thinking about it as we are talking. And there were so many funny stories, especially. I think we also share something tidbit in Moon and Mars in the book, which is very interesting in terms of how Mars can be an aggressor and also, both an attacker and also a guardian.
Yes.
Because, so a father turns out to be a guardian for his little daughter. And when there is something fishy that happens, or if something is not good, I think the father instantaneously or spontaneously takes the role of a very aggressive Mars. So a Mars can shield, and the same Mars can also cut off. So that is the flavor. And those are the emotions. Not, I don't mean to be so aggressive or
It's okay.
or kind of
today.
I'm so
you're Mars.
Mars.
Yeah,
right?
maybe now I'm Mars. And now I'm Mars. But yeah, so the point is like the moon, as and when it kind of moves away and gains its own light, separating from Mars, it gains various flavors by being in various signs. And it kind of tells you a different story each and every time when moon actually makes a mark in some other phase. So a conjunction could be like its emotions are together and it can burst anytime. But when the moon is actually culminating exactly 180 degrees away from Mars, it's a different story where there is always this battle between whether or not we should move forward. Or take an initiative. So the moon says yes, Mars is even more yes, but who does actually say no? And that is and that is exactly what you will see in the book.
Who actually says no? And you're right. I would not have thought, like, even having been the one writing it with you, like reflecting that way, you're right. It does have those angles in there, almost like who's talking now, who's acting now, who's at which end of what. And when you were talking about the opposition, this should I stay, should I go, to your point of, but who is the person that makes that decision? I remember you also writing about, I'm going to give away a little bit about what you wrote, but you deserve it for this part, how like I think it's like the moon somehow stoking the fire for Mars as far as like where action actually happens.
Yes.
And the way you wrote that, which I just can't repeat it perfectly right here now, it really opened my mind to what actually gets things going. We always think about Mars getting things going, but without the heart, without that thing underneath, do we really get going? So
right, because then you're just kind of going. There's is not necessarily the best experience of Mars, just the uninhibited going. That can be a very quick burnout, but behind with some desire and some heart behind it. For sure. If you've ever watched a Martian person,
no, I'm not Martian.
You can see it. I don't know. I'm going to say today, I feel like we have Moon, Mars, Mercury very well configured between the three of us today. So I think there's more Mars present for you today.
Oh,
I mean, Mars does rule my chart, so I probably can't totally avoid.
yeah. I think there are so many interesting relationships of phases in between both our charts, especially the sun and the moon. It's for me, it's okay to discuss my chart, but I don't want to open up about hers. But
okay.
There are so many interesting phasal relationships, which I think came live when we were dealing with the book. Especially, I think we as we never planned anything, just a few conversations. I think we kind of switched the roles of various planets while we were writing, and where I was very moonish, Tara took the role of the other planet. Especially, I remember when she was stern about something, and she was this Saturnian figure. No, I'm saying it in a positive way. It was in a Saturnian figure who's quite determined and knows what she does. Okay, it's very before, when a work is done, it's very difficult to have that conviction to kind of understand how it might actually turn out. But I really admired the conviction. She put it I cannot say it better. Like Mars rules her chart, so it kind of cuts the way through. But also the Saturn comes in and says that yes, this is right. And when she writes the message to me, she turns out to be a Jupiter. So
that's the best compliment ever. I'm laughing because my partner Darren he will say to me, "Put away Saturn, bring back Venus." That's what he will say. So
that is fantastic. Well, I have my Venus in Aries, so I'm like, I have had a whole journey of learning about that. I'm like, you know what? I actually don't have to clonk people over their head and drag them back to my love layer and like make them love me. Like there's actually a completely different vibration, but it's very, when I could understand it in terms and context of being a gibbous person, it made a lot of sense as to how and why I did and moved the way that I did, and how to kind of rekey that thinking. And now I teach Venus in Aries as I'm like, be aggressively friendly and aggressively willing to receive. Nice. Like, because Venus in the acquisition process, but like an Aries energy, is really delicious, and all sorts of things come to me. I don't know how many interviews I've done in the last few years since I was able to kind of wiggle in and switch those qualities to work with that. But other than that, then it has very Venus and Aries moments where I'm like, I told my husband that I was going to be his girlfriend. I was like, so I prayed about it and everything, and I'm going to go ahead and be your girlfriend. You should pray and talk to who you need to, but I've made some decisions.
So good.
Right. And he's a Cancer. He was like, oh, all right, well, I guess we'll be building a family. It'll be great. And I'm like, you're right.
Oh.
So, there's a lot to be gained from the book and then going out to live the book.
It's very difficult to kind of put you inside a bottle and call you Mars or Moon, but I think you just expressed all the 25 planets in like 2 minutes of your conversation. So and that is the primary quality of an interviewer who's kind of donning the role of questioning people. So she needs to know everything, and she does know everything.
Well, you guys, this has been super great. I'm glad that we got to get together. I hope there's more. You guys come and get the book. Oh, wait, I have to QVC correctly. Ooh. It's beautiful. The cover is beautiful. And even holding it, it is an energetically sound and beautiful book. I really, again, just want to thank you guys for writing it, for coming together. And I know you spoke about it as being a calling, like there was really no way to say no. And I do understand that. But the fact that you responded and did it is going to change our community. It's going to change what people have access to. And that's a really big deal. So I want to thank you.
Well, thank you for giving us an opportunity to share it. Well, that's super meaningful sharing this time with you. And I do feel like we exemplified literally in our conversation. It couldn't be better. I'm going to be happy all day about just that on its own.
For a technical astrologer like me, what's better than having a Mercury Moon conjunction right when it is happening?
Yes. Thank you for bringing us back to the. You're so good at that.
The guardian of the astrology. We appreciate you.
Yeah. That's perfect. Guardian of the astrology. You can put that on your new.
That's right. We're just over here whipping it to the wind. Yeah. And you're like, no, friends, we're actually astrologers. Remember that. So you guys click in the description box down below. I'm going to make sure you have the link to pick up the book. If you do pick up the book, and when you pick up the book and have thus read it, please leave a review, share, give feedback, share what your experience was. Even if it's a year from now, come back and let them know. Did it help? Do you understand something different? This is important. It's also how we form community and keep a conversation going. So everything will be in the description box down below. Before we hop off of here, for both of you together or individually, are you teaching, presenting? You got any cool things going on we should know about and link people to?
Aswin,
I think
are you?
I'm not really doing anything. I'm a very, as of now, I'm lazy, but I'm trying to put together a course which will be an integrated work on Vedic, Hellenistic, and medieval Persian astrology. And apart from that, I'm trying to get together my head to complete the 2 books that I've been writing. One is on an Indian timing technique, and another is basically the amalgamation of, again, traditional annual predictive methods. So, but probably these are the main things that I will be doing over the next 2 years or so. But as far as what I have to offer, I think I'll be ready if anyone is up to kind of calling me for something. Always open for collaboration.
Yeah. Well, for me, my big thing, so I've been working for 6 years for a big metaphysical and educational company called Sage Goddess, sagegoddess.com. And I am the resident astrologer and the lead writer. So I've been, doing a lot of work on the educational materials and things, but in some ways more of a supportive role in part, at least for the teaching. But this year, 2023, we have added a proper astrology class called Living Astrology to the monthly program. So I teach a class, co-teach with the Sage Goddess, but I lead that class once a month. And that's my big excitement. And we have probably in that class, I don't know, around 1,500 students. Like, it's a big class. So it's a big community. And that's my new excitement. And how we're approaching it, it's not like a start you from the basics, bring you up, because you can't do that once a month in a year, right? We all know, those of us who have done it, it's like years of stuff. But what we do every month is we get together and we talk about the most relevant transits of the month and kind of keywords and how to work through that. And we pick one thing for a deep dive. Like, for example, in January, we did Mars. So, which was a great way to kind of start the year. So yeah, that's my thing.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'll make sure to put links to both of you, to your websites, to your work, to all the good things you've got going on, so people can come experience you on their own, because another very big piece of this channel is bringing people in so we can share and have community, but also so that people can find their teachers and their mentors or whatever it needs to look like. This really becomes a space and a hub for people to be able to do that. So we'll make sure that people who need to and are ready to can connect with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh.
We're all thankful.
Yes, we're all.
And thank you guys for showing up, watching today. Thank you if you're watching back. Make sure you share the video. Make sure you check out the book, share the book, once you get it. And let us know how all of these things are playing out for you and how they are changing your engagement with the astrology and with your own life. So, all right, you guys, I love you a ton, and we will see everybody next time.